So very quick.
Meeting and can be found within the council's website. The YouTube stream will end when we go into part 2 of the agenda. However, the meeting will still be recorded and can be provided to any member not on Cabinet who is interested. All members are asked to keep their microphone on mute and only unmute when they wish to speak. If you do not mute yourself, the moderator will do this for you. However, when you wish to speak, you will need to turn your microphone back on. Please, if you can, raise your hand via the Teams link if you wish to speak, and Claire, the moderator, will let me know who has requested to speak. Reports are then presented by the relevant portfolio holder, after which I will bring the item into Cabinet. And if any member of the Cabinet wishes to speak on the report, they just unmute and speak. After Cabinet has considered the reports, I'll invite any comments from members not on committee. Any written representation for members of the public will also be read out at the appropriate point. I'd like to remind all members that this is a meeting of the Cabinet that's held in public. We do need to make progress tonight, and so questions only directly that are pertinent to the decisions being made should be raised. Right, therefore, moving swiftly on, if I may. Apologies for absence. All members of the Cabinet are present, as are the statutory officers. There are no apologies for absence. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from any members of the Cabinet? Okay, none declared. Agenda item number 3, the minutes of the last meeting. The minutes of the last meeting held on Wednesday, the 14th of October 2020 are attached. Do any members of the Cabinet have any questions or points they wish to raise?
I'd just be happy to move them, Chair.
Okay, any other comments? Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Mick. That's seconded. Any members not on Cabinet have any points with regard to the minutes? Okay, those minutes are accepted. Agenda item 4, the Cabinet Forward Plan. The Cabinet Forward Plan is published. I have no comments other than just for Cabinet members to note. Any comments from members of the Cabinet? Any comments from members not on Cabinet? Okay, the Cabinet Forward Plan is noted. Okay, agenda item 5, urgent decisions taken due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Right, as all members of the Cabinet will be aware, we took a decision some months ago that at every meeting of the Cabinet and meeting of the Council, we would declare and publish all urgent decisions that have been made due to the pandemic, and this is the latest update report. Colleagues will note there's been 2 decisions made since the last meeting of the Cabinet on the 13th and 18th of October. One in respect to Pearson House on Station Road, where there was some additional funds required for the project, which were approved. And then secondly, the discretionary test and trace support payment of the government that we needed to put forward through a decision on policies so that we could administer to our local community. Any questions or any points from members of the Cabinet on those urgent decisions? Good. Any questions from any members not on Cabinet? Okay, good. That's noted then, that report. We then move on to agenda item 6, which is the Corporate Strategy Position Statement Quarter 2 of 2020-2021. Okay, the Quarter 2 performance report, which is July to September, as mentioned, is a transitional report as we move from the previous corporate plan to the refreshed corporate strategy approved by the Council on the 30th of September 2020. Following the approval of this strategy, further work has been undertaken to develop a more detailed project mandate and to set up new performance measures ready for reporting at Quarter 3, which is the end of December of this year. This type of development and documentation is a new process to the Council, and it's to ensure that activity is clearly scoped, measured and monitored. Reporting of the corporate strategy will be more streamlined to ensure a focus on Council priorities. Organisation and service level performance will continue to be monitored as per the performance management framework. Each service will develop a business plan to capture their priority actions and service level performance indicators. Business plan monitoring statements will be available to the Performance and Budget Scrutiny Panel twice a year to set out service level performance and project activity. And whilst mentioning the Performance and Budget Scrutiny Panel, I'd like to thank the Chair and members of that committee for a very detailed scrutinisation of the position statement on Monday. And from that, members will all note on the Cabinet that there were 5 recommendations that came from the Scrutiny, Budget and Performance Panel. I think it's only appropriate that I quickly read those out to the Cabinet. And that's number 1, the Scrutiny, Budget and Performance Panel thanks the Leader, Chief Executive and Shared Services Lead for presenting such a detailed report and answering all questions. Number 2, the Scrutiny, Budget and Performance Panel looks forward to the Directorate performance indicators being presented to future meetings. Number 3, the Scrutiny, Budget and Performance Panel welcomes the offer of the Corporate Strategy project mandates being provided to panel members. Number 4, the Scrutiny, Budget and Performance Panel asks that a future meeting takes a deep dive into the organisational development strategy. And finally, the timeframes involved in the project to deliver a mental health programme for the young people be reviewed. I think as a Cabinet we're happy to accept all those recommendations from the panel, and again I reiterate and I thank the panel for a very, very detailed scrutiny of, I think it just took about an hour, of the performance report, and I do look forward to the next performance report, which will have some more meat on the bones, shall we say, and particularly will have some more data to back up and indicate performance against the new corporate plan. So given that, I open it up to Cabinet. Are there any particular questions or points that members of the Cabinet would like to raise? No? Good. Any members not on committee? Any questions or points would like to raise? Councillor Ogilvie.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's just in relation to page 34 of the report, the key performance indicators. And it's the one relating to the digital strategy that says at least 40% of service requests will be received by self-service channels. Could you just confirm how that will actually be measured? Thank you.
Vicky, are you on the call? Sorry, on the meeting, I can't see. Vicky, can you answer that, please?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Chair. So whenever we get a contact via the website or online, it's captured in a report, and we'll use that report to inform this measure. So we've developed a detailed data definition statement which will set that out, and that will be the process that we use. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Vicky. That's clear.
Can I come back? Could I come back, Chair? Just a supplementary.
Yeah, go on, Alan.
Yeah, that seemed to address the number of people who access service via the website, but it doesn't tell me how many people have accessed the service not on the website. That's how you're going to establish a 40% figure. So that's why I'm asking, how do you measure both sides of that equation? Thanks.
Vicky, do you want to come back, or Gary?
Sorry, yes. Yes, sorry. Yes, it's captured. It's captured through a range of different reports that we use whenever people contact us. It might be via email as well. So it's any online channels. We bring them together into one report and then use that to calculate the figure overall. So it is a range of different, wherever people have contacted us using online channels, it'll be brought together in a single report that we use to work out the percentage. compared to the other channels, face to face or phone, for example.
Yeah, I think the answer you're after, Alan, is there'll be a number of tasks that we undertake that aren't delivered online through online access. In other words, a denominator. I think that's the number you're after, the one you're after. So that'll be part of the data that we bring together to determine how we collect the 40%. So we will have a piece of work that spells out exactly how that data is collected, which again we're happy to share.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Vicky. And if members require any more clarification, they can always speak to the officers directly who will provide this. Okay, so I don't think we have any more questions. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions about the mental health support programme. What's the age range of the young people that are being considered? And the other question I wanted to ask was, have we identified the local providers? And if we have, who are they?
Thanks, Councillor Clark. This is where I do have a frustration at times, because those exact questions were debated at length by the scrutiny committee, and I do feel that if members, this is where we're getting into the repeated questions at numerous different meetings that we're trying to avoid now. However, in answer to your question, it's under 24s of people that are considered young people, and we are looking, and Vicky and the team are working with the partnerships, South Ribble Partnership and the Chorley Public Works, the LCFT, and we will be coming back with a number of support partners to assist in this programme moving forward. The main aim is to try and accelerate the delivery of this at the moment.
If I could come back on a supplementary, Chairman, the main provider of mental health care services in South Ribble is Lancashire Care. Are they going to be excluded from their discussions?
The part of the partnership, Colin, so the answer is no. Nobody is being excluded. Councillor Phil Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have a question, but I will, and it's on Penwitham Leisure Centre, but I will ask it outside of the meeting, if that's okay.
Thanks, Phil. That's more than welcome. Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions, Claire?
Councillor Smith, have you still got your hand up?
Yeah, so Councillor Smith asked us. Right, let's move on then. So, Cabinet's asked to consider and comment on the report. I think we've all done that, and it's we've accepted the report, and let's move on. So, agenda item 7, colleagues, is decision on the new council logo and brand. So, Cabinet will recall that a decision was made at a previous Cabinet meeting to go out to consultation on a rebranding exercise for the authority. That consultation has now ended, and Andrew Daniels, the Shared Service Lead for Communications and Visitor Economy, will now update you all on, and myself, on the progress and the recommendations. Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. So as was just introduced there, this is a follow-up really to the paper at last month's Cabinet, where members agreed to go out to consultation on 3 options for a new logo for the council. So we've done a consultation, we've circulated information to members, and we've done a couple of different things with staff. We shared things on the intranet, and we've done some hard copy versions for colleagues who don't access the computer system, and we've shared the information on social media to get some feedback. And I think with all logos, you'll get different opinions on different ones. Some people will like a particular one, some people won't like one. And I think the key thing for us really was that the general principles of incorporating elements of the green agenda, the river, and some of the elements of the original crest were all broadly supported by people who got back to us on the consultation. So out of the options, if you sort of totted up really where people indicated a favourite, if you like, the shield option was the one that was most popular. And you will see in the report that we've included a number of tweaks from that original Shield option that was contained in the consultation. And that's to reflect people's feedback. And I think that's at paragraph 10 in the report. So some of those changes are just simplifying the rows a little bit and trying to match in the colours of the rows, the red and the blue and the green, so they worked a little bit better together. And I think it was a comment made at the previous meeting here, and a couple of comments made were around the Shield option perhaps looking like a football club crest or a school badge. And I think with that, I suppose the evolution of those types of crests would naturally be similar to a council. You know, they can be quite intricate and authoritative. So that wasn't to be unexpected, but we have tweaked it and changed some of the Shield outline to try and soften it a little bit and make the wording fit along with the image a bit better as well. So the scope of the rebrand, once we've chosen the option tonight, will be as detailed previously, really. So this is about updating all the digital platforms with the new logo as the, sort of the main thing that we will be doing. And that's particularly linked to the new website that's going to be launched early in the new year, so it's a really good opportunity to do it. We will be looking at, obviously, refreshing uniforms, refreshing vehicles, but that's going to be done on a replacement basis. So once stock runs out, we will replace it. Once a vehicle is up for, a new vehicle's being bought or a new one being leased, then we'll replace the logos on them at that particular time. One part of the feedback that we got in the consultation, obviously, that residents are aware of, very conscientious about the cost of this type of thing, which I'm sure all members are, and we are too. So I think that's, reflected in what we're going to be doing and doing this on a replacement only basis. Excuse me. We're not going to be replacing things for the sake of doing it. And I think that's really important. It's reflected in the document. So just to summarise, this is about choice of a logo. This is trying to, sort of represent the council in a professional, modern way, particularly with a lot of things being used digitally. And we've now got the skills in-house, a full graphic design service. That means that we can roll that logo out onto everything that we do and portray that image that we want, so that residents know what the council's doing for them and we're seen in a positive light with them. So the proposal is that option A, I think it is on the Appendix A, is the one that we go forward with, and the idea will be that we will launch in the new year with the new website. So that's it from me. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Andrew. And on behalf of the Cabinet, I want to personally thank you and the comms team for what was a really good, interesting digital, consultation with the residents. It was fantastic to see, as you say, the 20,000 people actually linked in or looked at the logo. And we had over 350 direct comments as well. And it was really, on the whole, quite well received. But I also really appreciated the way that you directly responded to a number of residents as well when they raised concerns, and when there was misinformation, shall we say, spreading around, that they actually ended up supporting the proposals that were being presented. So please, so thank you. And this is one of the many benefits we get, don't we, from shared services, and it's really, really pleasing to see. So the proposal in front of Cabinet is the brand, the logo, shall I say, at Appendix A. As we've said, we've made a decision that we are rebranding as of January. We need a modern, fit-for-purpose logo in this digital age, and our website, our brand new website, is being launched very early January. So are there any comments from members on Cabinet? Councillor Tomlinson.
Thanks, Leader. As you said, the decision to do this was taken quite some time ago. Even pre-COVID, we decided to do this. So that being said, we need to implement the decision that we took some months ago. As a rugby league fan, I've been really interested in the last couple of weeks to see Wigan Warriors go through exactly this same process. They've got a well-established but very old-fashioned crest, but well-loved and famous crest that goes on the shirts. And they're in the process of rebranding. And to hear their chief executive, who's a guy called Chris Radlinski, who was a very famous rugby player, explain why they were doing this, it was a mirror image of the comments that we've had here. A club that, yes, has a great tradition, but needs to move forward, needs to engage in the digital era, needs to be conscious of how it markets itself. So it's really just share that as a point of interest, really, that very close by us, we have an organisation that I would argue is more famous and possibly more loved than South Ribble Borough Council, going through exactly the same process, but explaining the reasons why they were doing it really very well. And as somebody who's been involved in the development of the new website, I see these two things definitely running hand in hand, and I'm happy to support option A.
Thanks, Matthew. Any other comments? Councillor Titherington?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I mean, I want to add my thanks to Andrew, because, I mean, as you said, Leader, I think the way that the consultation has been handled has been excellent, and I think the explanations that have been forthcoming when people have raised concerns has been equally efficient and professional. I just want to say that I think it is probably the most appropriate time for us to be considering this, and I think it is also important to really emphasise what has been said by Andrew, is that in relation to the cost, because at previous meetings there have been some suggestion that money was being directed away from some of the challenges that we've got at the moment, away from those challenges towards this logo, and that's you know, is completely not the case. And in fact, I think probably the fact that we are facing a COVID challenge, and largely because of the actions that we've been doing and the way that you've promoted the borough yourself, Leader, is that we have sprung to national prominence. I mean, I think on occasions when you say that you're from South Ribble, people say, well, where is that? And I think now that we are there in the regional and national consciousness, is that it is a time for us to look forward, because we are going to come out of the present challenges, and it is important that we do present an image that is progressive, that it's exciting, and that it does denote all the things that we stand for. So I think the colours, the design, everything else like that is just perfect, and a well done to the officers who've been involved in it. So fully support the recommendations.
Thanks, Mick. Councillor Blinsky-Gelder.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm an avid user of social media, and I mean, without the logo, just before that, the actual South Ribble Facebook page has really come on in the last 12 months. But all my family and friends talk about how the Facebook page is a lot more interactive. It's very informative, and that they didn't really, it wasn't something they referred to previously. But in terms of the logo, I've been privy to lots of discussions online around the logo. People shared the old logo just as a comparison. And although some people did have their reservations, I would say that the sense that I got was that most of them actually contributed to the forwarding of it and the design of it. And I'd say most of them were supportive. I've said it before and I'll say it again, I think the logo represents the Ribble, the green, and also the red rose of Lancashire. And I think, like I said before as well, that it will create a sense of place once we start to see the logo about the borough.
Thanks, Daniela. I'm particularly pleased to see the red rose of Lancashire there, and we're clearly identifiable as a Lancashire District Council now. Any other questions from members on Cabinet? Any points? No. Any members not on Cabinet? Councillor Michael Green.
Thanks, Chairman. Can I thank the officer for the presentation and for the work that he's done on this piece of work before I commence any comments. I think the need for changing the logo, which you set out, just completely doesn't fit. You can look at lots of councils up and down the country that have very traditional logos, and that doesn't stop them marketing what that particular council is doing via social media, websites, printed form, or any other form of publicity. It's about what you have to sell as a product or what services and facilities you're offering your residents, not about a fancy rebranding exercise. Anyway, putting those comments to one side, can I ask some questions and make some comments, please. So when did the consultation start and when did it end, please? Why was the consultation carried out with the public solely by means of social media? And before you come back and say, obviously, we're in restricted times due to COVID, fully accept that, but there are other means that we could have used to get the message out to the public. Were of the 350 comments that were received, why have we not been given a link to those as councillors so that we could peruse those comments and see the detail of what people are actually saying? And why did we consult on 3 options with the public to then take their views, and then we've come up with a recommendation for a different design again, which whilst it's similar to one of the ones that went out, the red rose has changed significantly. In fact, you almost struggle to say that it is a rose with this modern interpretation that's been put on. The comment was made that the red rose was dominating the logo to some extent, but you've actually made it bigger now in the recommendation. And we've ended up with a modern shield which is offset, slanted and lopsided rather than the ones that went out. So I'm just wondering why you've come up with a different design altogether and are intending implementing that, I assume, this evening without further consultation with the community. Thank you.
So we take from that, Councillor Green, that you like the logo. There's a few issues here, isn't there? And I understand why you don't like the logo, because you're trying to abolish the council at the moment. So it's hand in hand, doesn't it? I do also note that you didn't submit any. You were asked by Andrew and the team, and you were emailed directly, every councillor was, for any comments they may have on the logos, and you didn't submit any at all. I also note that it's slightly hypocritical, because the first thing you did as a county councillor when you took over at County Hall was to change the logo. So then you sit there and say, why are we changing the logo? Because we are. The rest of your questions, Councillor Green, I'll get I'll ask Andrew, if he can write to you with that detail. But if you'd taken part in the consultation and if you'd monitored the social media accounts of the local authority, like every member of the Cabinet did, you'll see the hundreds upon hundreds of questions and points that were raised. And the changes that actually have been made to the shield, as Andrew said earlier, is following a review and listening to our residents who requested these type of tweaks. So on that, any more questions, Claire, from anyone else? Can you make it brief, Councillor Green, please? We need to make progress.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I think it's important that we have the responses to my questions this evening before you make a decision, that this is a decision which Cabinet will be implementing without recourse to full council. So it's important that those answers are available for everybody before that decision is taken. And with regard to your other comments, the only person that's trying to abolish South Ribble is you. I'm surprised we don't.
Right, let's move on. Councillor Green, Councillor Green, Councillor Green. There's always one, and it's always you. Councillor Titherington. Councillor Tomlinson.
Thank you. I think debates about whether we should do this or not, or whether it's a good idea, are null and void. We chose to do this some 15 months ago, so that decision has been taken. And as for the very specific questions that Councillor Green may have, they're not going to change the decision, because the decision will be taken by Cabinet, and we followed the consultation. I think the point you make, it's a really important one. Why is the option that we're now showing not one of the ones we went out to consultation? And the answer to that is because we listened to the consultation and tweaked and changed to come up with 3 different options. And the staff are to be commended on that. They didn't just say, well, these are the responses, but these are the 5 we went out to consultation on, so these are the ones we've got to choose. We listened to the consultation, and we made tweaks and changes to come up with 3 options that reflected the views of the public made in the consultation. Councillor Green wants those very specific questions answered. Of course he's entitled to those answers, but he doesn't need them tonight.
Thanks, Matt. And clearly, just because I'm conscious that this meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube, so I'll just remind all members of the public watching us that it was the Lancashire County Conservative group that put forward the proposals to abolish all the districts in Lancashire that we do not support. Councillor Phil Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the reason that one or two of us, and certainly I count myself amongst those that didn't reply to the consultation, is what Councillor Tomlinson is already saying, that the decision was already made, basically. Me being a very, very traditionalist, I like the old one. There wasn't an option to either vote for that or change it, or even have the other shield on it. So that was the reason that I did not reply to the consultation, because the decision, not the actual decision on each one, but the decision, the very narrow decision on the what was put forward was already taken. So thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Phil. Any other questions, Claire? Councillor Margaret Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. I am not in favour of this new logo, but I realise the decision has been made to change the logo, so I accept that. My reason for actually speaking just at this moment in time is to say that I don't think it's appropriate for us to keep going back and forth to say what the county does and what is going on at the county. This is a Borough Council meeting, and I think we should stick to the Borough Council matters. Thank you.
I agree wholeheartedly, Margaret. It's just hypocrisy that I need to address at times, that's all. So any other questions from anyone? Claire? Right, good. So we've had a proposer, Councillor Tomlinson, a seconder, Councillor Titherington, that the new logo identified at Appendix A is adopted, and to introduce the new logo in line with the launch of the new website in January 2021. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 8, the budget monitoring Q2. Councillor Matthew Tomlinson.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I'm pleased to present this report to Cabinet. Just the formalities, the portfolio recommendations are that Cabinet notes, reviews and comments on the contents of the report, and that Cabinet approves the reprofiled budgets for the capital programme as detailed in Appendix C. Just some comments on the report. I think it's a very encouraging picture at the moment. We are currently forecasting to be just £55,000 out on a budget of over 14.5 million. And when you think of everything that's going on at the moment, I do think that's really encouraging. People who've heard me speak before will know that I do speak out loudly for accurate budgeting, which reflects our corporate priorities, and then getting on and spending that money to deliver our corporate priorities. So the closer we are to our budget, the more comfortable, personally, I am. The Table 1 does itemise some variances in the whole. They tend, or on the whole, sorry, they tend to be small variances. Members will see the additional COVID-19 expenditure in there to the revenue budget, some £2.5 million. I said on Monday at the scrutiny session, and I'll say it again for people who weren't present or listening in, I have asked officers, I beg your pardon, I've asked officers to draw up a separate report which will itemise all the COVID funding that we've had. So whether it's grant funding, we've had several tranches. It's a very fluid picture depending on what tier we're in, whether there's a national lockdown or not. And we've had several streams of funding, some that have got quite specific guidelines on how we can spend it, and some which are far more discretionary. I do think that for everybody's sake, for members, that we put all that into one separate report so that we can see where we've had money and what it was for and whether we've spent it or not. Because otherwise the picture can get cloudy, if not confused. So just give that notice that that report will be coming hopefully early in the new year, so we can all feel like we understand what money we've got in. Table 2 breaks down the revenue forecast variations to within directorates, and then there's a table itemising the staffing costs and how they're different how they've differed against the budgets. On page 56, you'll see there is some detail there about the COVID funding, and that's the kind of thing I want to be separated out. Table 5, fees and charges. Again, some variances on there. For instance, car parking charges. Obviously, we didn't charge at all for our car parks during the lockdown, and we're forecasting to be short on funding there. I just raised that as one. And then as a positive, our sports coaching people are forecast to bring in more, as is, interestingly, our brown bin service. You'll recall we reduced the cost on that this year from £30 to £25 per annum as part of our manifesto commitment to reduce the tax burden on our residents. And I'm pleased to say that that change in price has actually resulted in even more people signing up for the service. There are several other tables that I'm happy to take questions on, including Appendix A, something again that I've asked to be introduced in this, just so that members can be apprised of where we are carrying vacancies and what we're doing about them. And then there's about movement in reserves and the capital programme that's referred to in the original recommendations. This did go to the budget scrutiny meeting on Monday, and I thank them for the questions and the recommendations, which again I'm going to recommend to Cabinet that we accept. And just for formality, I'll read those out now. Recommendation 1, that the panel thanks the Cabinet member and the Deputy Director of Finance for their detailed report and answering the questions. Recommendation 2, that the panel welcomes the relatively small variance projected in the budget so far this year. Recommendation 3, the panel support the Cabinet member's proposal to bring together all COVID-related financial information into one report for monitoring purposes. Recommendation 4, the panel looks forward to the results of the review of reserves as part of next year's budget process. And number 5, that the panel is encouraged with the delivery of the capital programme at this stage in the year. As I began my comments, I do think it is a positive report, and with everything else that's going on, I think that is to be commended. We should thank all the staff who've worked so hard in the first 6 months to deliver what they've delivered. And with that, I'm happy to take any comments or questions.
Thanks, Matthew. Just a very couple of brief points from me. Firstly, thank you and James for yet again another very detailed report, easy to read and understand, which is exactly what we need. Number 2, thank you again to the scrutiny panel. Again, it was a robust, good piece of scrutiny, and I think it's fair to say on behalf of all the Cabinet, we do actually appreciate the scrutiny, because if it needs to feed into all the decision making, and I enjoy their input and value their input. And finally, I think the issues surrounding the COVID grants funding, I think you're absolutely right to be separating that out, because again, it can be used, can't it, as misinformation, and all we want to do is report accurately to our residents what is and isn't available, and be able to be in a position actually to support the government as well, where the funding is being directed to the right areas. So on that, any questions from Matthew? Councillor Sue Jones.
Yes, please. Thanks for that, Matt. Can I just draw your attention to page 74? I think members, if they've read this, will have noticed that during investigations, contamination has been found on Bent Lane. Members might have noticed it, so certainly some residents have noticed it and brought it to my attention. And it is worrying that all the plans that we had for Bent Lane look as though they might be stalling for a while. What I really want to make absolutely clear in my own mind, because you're the man of numbers, is where it says 2021 and refers to £68,000, do we still keep that money? And when we look at 2021, there is an additional amount of money of £70,000. So we're not losing that money. it's just stalling a little bit, and then we'll be able to move on once the remediation has been done.
I'm happy to confirm just what you've said, Councillor Jones. It is unfortunate because there is a very active Friends group down on Bent Lane who we've tried to support. You'll recall Bent Lane was one of the green areas in Leyland that for a while was under threat under the previous administration, and we have committed to support them. Obviously that money was put in there to enhance the existing playground, but the initial exploratory works have thrown a bit of a spanner, let's be honest, a bit of a spanner in there because there is contamination. And once you know there is contamination, you can't ignore it. We have to address that. But our commitment to Bent Lane as a local immunity and as a playground is absolute. And I'm be hoping to address some of that as we work up a budget for next year.
Thanks. That's very reassuring on that. What I've managed to do today, just for everybody's kind of information, is that the officers have now put down a timetable for how we're going to deal with that in terms of the remediation, which has to be done, and hopefully, Chair, you kind of guide me on that. With some of this. We're looking at, I just have to check my words here, that once the mitigation is done, we can start working on the proposals. And in fact, could we run them side by side so that we can kind of make the process far faster than it is now?
Thanks, Sue. Absolutely, no, that's I ask that quite often, that we shouldn't wait for one element to be complete before we start another when we know that they can be and should be running parallel. So you have the support of the Cabinet that we should be procuring the remediation works and the playground works at the same time, because we've got an absolute commitment to refurbish that playground. So the answer is yes, and please keep up the pressure and ensure that happens, Sue. Yeah. Any other members on Cabinet? No. Any members not on Cabinet? Councillor Ogilvie.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just a couple of comments, both of them relating to COVID funding, really. The first one is just a quick comment. It's the same comment that I made at the end of the Q1 report, is that when you look at the bottom of Table 2 on page 51, where it shows you the difference between the COVID funding received and the COVID funding spent, there's currently a £130,000 benefit to the council as it stands there. So if you take COVID out of the equation, in terms of, if you like, normal running council work, then rather than the 55k surplus, there's currently a 75k deficit. But I've made that comment at the last quarter as well. Second comment really is just a bit of clarification on the government rules about the funding. And I'm looking at paragraphs 33 and 34 on page 57. Paragraph 33 states that any COVID funding that's not fully committed should be returned to the government. That's followed immediately by paragraph 34 that states that the additional government funding of 130k for administering the business grant scheme is actually not needed by this council, as it can be swallowed up within existing budgets. So does that not mean that the 130k funding from the government needs to be returned to them and not returned to the council reserves as stated in paragraph 34? So I'm just looking for some clarification on the government rules about return of unspent funding. Thanks.
Thanks, Alan. I think if you know on paragraph 33, it begins with, to be prudent, it is assumed. And so it's not, this must be. This is just accountants being prudent, as I would always encourage them to be. If anybody else has got any questions on COVID funding, can I ask them just to wait until we produce the report that I've promised everybody? Because it is very fluid. my assumption, and you did raise that in the first quarter, and it is still showing that same figure. But my assumption is we will spend the money that we are given as much as we can. But I say we don't know that all the money will have to be returned, and in fact the wording is to be prudent. It is assumed that all funding will, and then either of those 3 bullet points. But I would ask members to be patient while we pull that report together, because I do think it'll be really helpful.
Okay. Thanks, Matthew.
Yeah, just as an example, Alan, that was at a point in time. There's now been a whole raft of new grant schemes announced, which will require us to put some additional resources into making sure that those are processed appropriately. So the assumption is right, but as Councillor Tomlinson says, I think we'll soon start to eat into that funding.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, this is a quarterly update report, and some of the COVID funding is actually available for up to April of next year to spend. So these, as Matthew says, let's wait for his report where this will all be made absolutely clear. Claire, anyone else? Councillor Margaret Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I first of all say to Councillor Tomlinson that I do welcome the full report that you will be bringing out in January. Mr. Hall, our interim chief executive, does keep me very much up to date in our weekly meetings, and I do then try to pass that information on to the group. But a comprehensive report that covers all the aspects and where the funding is going and how it actually relates to how it has to be spent, I think will be very, very welcome. And as I say, I welcome that. It's just a question, please, Councillor Tomlinson, if I may. On the it's page 69, which is the reserves planned movement, and I'm just it's the third line down. It's the borough investment account. Please, could you remind me the 700,000 that has actually gone out, what that was for, and on the next tranche, which is 2021, we've got 1,670,000. Is that the same nearly 2 million that is actually referred to on page 60, which is for the town deal, or is it something separate? Because there's 2 million for the town deal there, and the 1,600,000 isn't actually mentioned. So I just wanted to know how much is committed on that fund. Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Margaret. No, the borough investment account, the vast majority of that is for Worden Hall. Which was some 2 point.
Is that the 1.67?
Well, it won't all be spent in 1 year, so we'll be spending some this year, and indeed a lot of work has been done. Whilst you can't see the physical work being done on Worden Hall, as the chair of scrutiny would be able to tell you, because I have to go to them at every meeting. We have done a lot of the preparatory work at Worden Hall in terms of surveys, environmental surveys, drawing up plans. So we have begun to spend money on Worden Park from the borough investment account already.
If I could just come back, please. Is that the 700,000 that is actually in this year that is going to Worden?
We've loaned Hoole Village Hall £200,000 as well for the work that they're doing there. You recall they needed some funding in able to realise their ambitions of building a new village hall there, and we agreed to loan them £200,000 out of the borough investment account. So some of that will be that as well.
Right. Could I just get it straight then? The 700,000 is some for Worden and some for Hoole Village Hall. Yes?
Yeah, unless James seeks to correct me, but my understanding that is what that is, yeah.
Right. So then could you tell me what, then, I know we're in this quarter and we're talking about this quarter, but I'm just interested to know what that 1,670,000 is as a commitment.
So that will be to do the actual build at Worden Hall
Right.
next year.
That's fine.
The intention is we're probably not going to start physical works at Worden Hall before the end of this financial year. So,
That's
yeah, does that make
fine,
sense?
thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Margaret. Thanks, Matthew. Councillor Damien Bretherton.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to make a comment. It was very impressive that we got the government funding, because £2.7 million is quite a substantial amount, and the £99,200 for the emergency assistance. I'll probably wait till the report comes out, but I'm just wondering if some of that was to help children, or is that a separate fund? In terms of the brown bin charges, it's good to see that lowering the charges actually resulted in increased revenue, and economists refer to that as the Laffer curve, especially down to taxation. Lower taxes, you end up with more revenues coming in. So it's quite pleasing to see that. Page 74, some good news, if anybody's not aware, but the Bellis Way playground, it makes a comment about the additional funding. Well, that has come through now, so the budget is £60,000. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can be absolutely explicit with you, Councillor Bretherton. The emergency assistant grant that was received from Lancashire County Council was not permitted to be used for children in receipt of free school meals, because there was a separate government initiative on the vouchers, the COVID Summer Food Fund, I think it was called. And and we can share this with you, that if members read the terms and conditions of that COVID Summer food grant and the terms of the emergency assistance grant, it is explicit that you can't mix one with the other. So the 99,244 was not permitted to be used on the free school meals. And the second question, Matt, do you want to take that on regarding the, I can't remember what it was now.
Was it about the brown bins, the second comment? It is interesting, isn't it? And as somebody who spent most of my working life in retail, there is an ideal price point at something. And I know Councillor Howard doesn't necessarily agree with me on this, but I do think that at £25, we've clearly found a price point that is acceptable to most people, that they think, you know what, I will pay that for a year for a brown bin. I'm not convinced that continually lowering it will continually raise the numbers of people who access the service. And there is a sweet spot somewhere to be met on supply and demand. And I genuinely think we've clearly found a price point there at £25 that our residents think is a reasonable one to pay.
Thanks, Matt. Final question, Councillor Phil Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Again, I can get this out of this meeting, but I'll just have a word perhaps with Matthew, and it's very parochial with regard to the long-term regeneration. And there's a comment in there which seems to have appeared that I'm not aware of, and certainly wasn't in our original budgets or in the budget itself, which is referring to 106 money and the scheme itself. So we're quite aware of the costs that would be involved, and some of it is highways and various things, but I say I can have that conversation out of that meeting, because as far as I'm concerned, that statement in there is not correct. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well, I welcome that opportunity. Anybody who's listened to me speak before about Section 106 monies is, I want to get them spent, and that money has been sat there for a while now, and if we can find a scheme that complies with the legalities around the Section 106 agreement and is supported by the local community, then I'm all for getting on with it.
Okay, thanks everybody for your input. Matthew, can you please just...
Chairman, sorry, could I just come back slightly on that? the problem wasn't the 106. The problem is where it says the money's coming from was 106. There was a dual arrangement with regard to capital spent from other sources and 106 to complete the scheme. Otherwise, it would not be completed. But I'll speak outside of the meeting on that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Matthew, can you just reaffirm?
Okay, so it seems a while ago now, but when I read these out, but we'll just go over the recommendations again. That Cabinet notes, reviews and comments on the contents of the report. That Cabinet agrees the reprofiled budgets for the capital programme as detailed in Appendix C. And then, of course, there were the further recommendations that I did read out from the Scrutiny Budget and Performance Panel.
Okay, they're proposed. Matthew,
Proposed.
thank you. I'm happy to second those. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Agenda item 9, the Community Wealth Building Action Plan. Councillor Aniela Bielinski-Gelder.
Thank you, Chair. I am extremely excited to be bringing this to Cabinet this evening. I'm passionate about challenging inequality and I care deeply about creating a fair and just society, and thank the Cabinet and other members for supporting this work. Before I get started, I'd really like to say a special thank you to Matthew Bakwariza-Jackson, the consultant who's supported us through the development of this plan since last June. So why community wealth building? This action plan has been expedited in the context of the COVID-19 crisis. The Centre for Local Economic Strategy, CLES, produced a timely report titled Rescue, Recover and Reform, which the Cabinet considered significant and something we should explore for the benefit of South Ribble. I proposed to Cabinet back in June that we look to a new model of economic development. One crisis after another, the financial crisis 10 years ago and now COVID, I proposed that we needed to think differently. I asked, where do we want to be in 5 or 10 years' time, and work backwards from that position. Where shall we begin now? The main priority for us is to ensure that our businesses and communities are more resilient and are more prepared for the next crisis. I would argue, along with other members, that 40 years of trickle-down economics, or what some may call traditional economics, hasn't worked for South Ribble. Companies and consultants come and go, leaving little in the way of long-lasting value. In addition, food banks are increasing, life expectancy is decreasing for the first time since the Second World War, and wages have stagnated. This action plan will stop the money seeping out to larger cities such as Manchester, Liverpool and even London. South Ribble will set a standard and take the lead in localising wealth, in supporting local businesses to bid for what would usually be unobtainable contracts. We will be looking at 5 pillars associated with ethical economic development: progressive procurement, advancing fair employment and just labour markets, as well as a plural and democratic ownership of the economy, socially just use of land and making financial power work for local places, for example, using credit unions or community banks. One of the easiest ways to explain community wealth building is by contrasting it to what we've inherited. So we've inherited traditional economic development, which is private sector led. We want to change that to make it cooperative, so we're working in partnership, private and public. The extraction of wealth to localising wealth, some area-based regeneration, to anchor institutes led regeneration, and limited outcomes to multiple outcomes, which was around the social value definition. Local government will become the placemaker, and where the focus has been around economic growth, the focus will change and it will become around social and environmentally focused. Over the next 3 to 5 years, South Ribble Council could see £85 million worth of procurement of goods and services for the Extra Care Scheme, the Leisure Centre, the Leyland Town Deal, the Mackenzie Arms site and other social housing, leisure and employment contracts. This action plan will ensure that as much of the money and the benefits associated, so skills and employment, will be retained within South Ribble, making businesses and communities more resilient for the future. In order to top and tail this report, I'd just like to thank the Scrutiny Committee for their recommendations. The action plan and report has already been to full scrutiny. All of the recommendations are being reviewed with the formal response as part of next paper, which comes to Cabinet in the new year. Some of them have already been implemented and others will be looked at further throughout the implementation process. And finally, I'm keen to give an update on the feedback we received from the businesses when consulted last week. First of all, it's important to note that this is the beginning of a long dialogue. However, there was a significant amount of buy-in and general agreement with all of the proposed action plans. The construction sector businesses, Eric Wright and Conlon, were the most engaged, already delivering the TOMS framework elsewhere and keen to pursue the progressive procurement further. Conlon already using the social value framework. Manchester and Lancaster were repeatedly used as good examples of they've been using and benefiting from social value requirements for some time, and Progress Housing were keen on exploring the fairer employment pillar. We all acknowledge and accept that this is the very beginning of a long conversation, but the overall objective is to improve the lives and life chances for individuals, businesses and communities in South Ribble. I'm happy to take any comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniela, and obviously we all joined you when you delivered this to the scrutiny committee, and again had a really good piece of scrutiny and adding into the value of the proposals that will be ultimately brought back to Cabinet in the new year. And obviously this is the cornerstone of the new corporate plan now moving forward. Any members on Cabinet have any questions or points for Daniela? No, good stuff, good stuff. Any members not on Cabinet? Councillor George Clooney, sorry, project slip. Councillor James Flannery.
I was already taking myself off mute. I knew what you meant, Paul. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just on this one, I've got a particular interest. Over 20 years ago, I was involved in when the European money came to Liverpool and seeing how that transformed the city, the communities and everything else that went with it. It's since the Social Value Act came in 2013, councils have been trying to implement this type of strategy ever since. And I'll be honest, I've got some experience of working as a private sector owner of a business with some of the bigger authorities, and they do it poorly. So this is a welcome step in the right direction, because why wouldn't you want more for your community? Why wouldn't you want more for the people who are living locally to work locally? It's an intelligent process, which is the implementation of it and the consultation. I've been watching the work which is getting done here, and it's fantastic work. But recently, just a quick one. I don't want to bore people with anything which we're privy to, but we've just gone through a process in another authority where in their procurement process, there's always a battle between cost and value, really. And on this one, it was 80-20 split. So the cost was 80% evaluated and 20% for the social value. Now that social value element was significant. It was about engaging local supply chain who do the employing locally, so that gives them a better chance. Engaging local suppliers, employing people more locally to the project. And it was evaluated with 20% of the moderation. So what eventually happened was we weren't the cheapest, but we won it on social value. Because if you just go on price, and the chair will know this from his experience, you end up with a race to the bottom, particularly with the challenging times we're in now with COVID. Effectively, what businesses will do, they'll go in with 0% profit, and they'll try and make the difference up with challenging the design, how it was built, the time, etc. So what we want is an harmonious partnership with people who want to deliver social value, and I think this is a step in the right direction. So to Daniela and the team and the officers, well done. So I'll shut up there. So well done. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay, for your positive words, and you're absolutely correct. You know, this isn't our money; this is the community's money, and the value of the social value, so to speak, cannot be underestimated. There's got to be something there for our communities, hasn't there? And I've often said, if any tender that's purely based on price, then I just think that's lazy procurement as well. So I fully endorse what you've said, Jay. Thank you. Next is Councillor David Howarth.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps one of the advantages of sitting in my office is that I can reach for my copy of Lipsy and I can have a debate with Councillor Tomlinson some other time about pricing policy. But on this particular report, if I could take you to page 89, the executive summary and the bullet points that are listed. Within those bullet points, and unfortunately I forgot to ask this at the scrutiny committee, there is a reference to bringing certain services back in-house, and I wonder if there is any indication that we could be given as to what those services might be.
Thanks, David. I think the answer to that is that everything's been looked at where we outsource the contract. So there's no decisions being made yet on anything, because clearly it's subject to a detailed business case that has to be submitted to the executive from officers. So we're looking at everything is the honest answer, and then we're putting a value to that, and then we'll be looking to make a decision. But as now, there's nothing in particular. David, Aniela?
Yeah, so Matthew Jackson, who supported this, he's not an expert in insourcing. This is like an aspirational kind of target, I suppose. And like Paul said, it's something that we need to explore. So people know, for example, that the leisure centre is run by Serco. And is that best value for money? Does that bring social value? And what have Serco brought to the local people in the last, I don't know how long it is since they've had the contract?
David, do you want to come back? Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I can come back. I would just urge an element of caution in this. I mean, Serco and the leisure centres is probably a very good example. Members of my group have always been advocates of bringing services back in-house. But I urge caution because 2 or 3 years ago, we had a very severe winter, and had County, for example, brought back all of the highway services back in-house, we would have been paying staff to sit in a depot for 3 months doing absolutely nothing. So very pleased that you're going to look at all aspects of this. But as I say, I would just urge a bit of caution as to what we do or don't bring back in-house, because it could actually cost us as opposed to save us at the end of the day.
Okay, thanks for that, David. Councillor Alan Ogilvie.
Thank you, Chair. The report is basically a theoretical vision with no evidence of the quantifiable benefit to the residents of this borough. I note from an internet search that the independent consultant you're using has advised around 50 UK authorities. Therefore, from his experience, can he then allow members of this council to be given visibility of a report from another council of similar size and characteristics as South Ribble, where they have already implemented a community plan like this that confirms and quantifies the benefits to residents? As an administration, you've often stated that the council will move forwards following evidence-based decisions. So the report I'm requesting will allow all our members to see that very evidence. It's important that we learn from others and understand the criteria for measurement of success of this proposed plan. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I am extremely keen on evidence-based policy making myself, having completed a Masters in Social Policy, and the whole Masters was about evidence. So in terms of the action plan, yeah, there is going to be an implementation plan. This is an interim holding position, looking and, like you say, exploring the options. And regarding the expert, the consultant Matthew, one of the recommendations which came out of scrutiny was a learning hour. So I will put that to him in terms of what he can provide information-wise, that learning hour for all members when he does that.
Thanks, Aniela. Alan, I think you're speaking, but you're on mute.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just when you do speak to him about bringing a report to scrutiny, if you could make the point that I've made, that it would be very useful to get a report from a council that has already implemented this plan, and a report that indicates the benefits to their residents. Thank you.
Okay, we'll look at that, Alan. I'm concerned solely with what's important and what benefits our residents ultimately. Councillor Damien Bretherton.
Thank you, Chairman. I've read through the reports and it keeps referring to anchor institutions. I'm just wondering if we could have an example of what is an anchor institution, because I haven't any idea at all. It'd be interesting to enlighten us who are the anchor institutions. In terms of pension funds, I've noticed a comment there utilising existing resources such as pension funds, but we only need to look at the pension funds of South Ribble Council employees and Lancashire County Council employees. I think from the last report, probably almost half of it, half of the pension fund is invested overseas, and not even in listed companies. It's actually invested in illiquid private equity, which some might consider quite high risk. So it'd be very interesting if money could come locally from pension funds. Pension fund trustees have got a legal obligation to try and get the best returns, and if that means going overseas, that's what they've been doing at the moment. But I'm sure if they can get very good returns locally, that would be of great benefit to local residents. I noticed a comment about wages being stagnated. I think from an economic point of view, it could be, some might argue, it's the lack of investment in technology, and companies relying on cheaper labour rather than spending the money and investing in technology to improve things. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. I agree in terms of the pension. I think the pension schemes are not only overseas, but a lot of them actually invested in fossil fuel industries. And I think there could be changes made to how ethical, the investment around pensions are. I'm not an expert on pensions, and that is the maximum I know about it. So I'm not going to pretend to know anymore. Thank you for your question around anchor institutes. At risk of, again, having the same question asked, because this was asked at scrutiny, but in the interests of informing the community what anchor institutes are, I'm happy to explain it. So an anchor institute is a large organisation like the police headquarters, South Ribble Council, Runshaw College, an institution which is based in the community and isn't going to go anywhere. And all these institutions spend a lot of money, millions of pounds a year, on stationery, food and things like that. And the question is, how much of that is retained within South Ribble? So are we buying pest control off South Ribble? I know that the police headquarters are. Do we buy food that Runshaw prepares or UCLAN prepares? And it's looking at it like that and trying to make sure that money goes round in the community instead of seeping out into other areas like Manchester or Liverpool.
Okay, thanks, Aniela. I'm wanting to make progress here, so we there's a couple more speakers and then we'll move on. Councillor Mary Green.
Thank you, Chair. As a long-standing member of the Planning Committee, and obviously I've got an interest in planning issues and applications, but I wonder if the Cabinet member could explain Pillar 4 on page 85, the socially just use of land. Could she explain to us in detail exactly what that means and what that might, how it might develop in the future, bearing in mind that we've got a local plan for housing and developments? If she could explain that, please. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I think Jonathan Node's on the line, actually, so it's probably better if he answers that. In terms of how much detail you want, that might be perhaps better sent in an email.
Jonathan, do you want to come in? Yep.
Yeah, good evening. Members.
Can I come back then? So is Jonathan there to explain what that is, please?
Yes, so I could come back on that, Councillor. So socially just use land, there's a number of actions in the action plan on this. So there's the planning dimension. So it's obviously there's a lot of private developers in the borough. We're already making big strides in that side in terms of working with developers on creating construction apprentices, things like that. Obviously, the large Kieran strategic site, there was a big apprenticeship and jobs asked from that as well. So it's things like that, and we do have an existing supplementary planning document which deals with that. But obviously, the council itself and other public bodies are developing within South Ribble themselves as well. So obviously, we've got schemes like the Mackenzie Arms, we've got the Leyland Town deal coming up, and there is the opportunity to maximise value to the community from those kind of schemes as well. So it's quite multi-dimensional, this bit. There's the planning bit, but there's also what we do ourselves with our own land in the borough. Happy to provide a bit more detail on that outside of the meeting, though, if there's any outstanding queries.
Thanks, Jonathan. That would be helpful. Thanks, Jonathan. Councillor Karen Walton.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the scrutiny meeting and the recommendations 2 and 3 on page 119, could the Cabinet member provide us with a list of businesses and organisations that have already been consulted? And if the ones that haven't been consulted, could we have a list of those, and when would there be a timeline of when they would be consulted for this actual scheme? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I think I said in my presentation that the business consultation would come forward in the second part of this through the implementation plan. So the full list of businesses will be given then. To date, we've consulted Conlon Construction, Department for Work and Pensions, Marketing Lancashire, Preston College, Runshaw College, Progress Group, Eric Wright, St Catherine's Hospice, British Aerospace, local clinical commissioning groups, and we're also involved in other things as well. I mean, Jennifer Clough updated me yesterday saying that we've been involved in Making Spend Matter programme, which is funded by the ERDF, and they're looking at how to improve social value and things like that. I'm just trying to think. I'm just trying to look on my list to see if I can see anything else. And there's lots. So the members of that group are Preston City Council, UCLAN, Lancashire Constabulary, Preston College again, Community Gateway in Preston, the Lancashire Skills Hub, South Ribble's Procurement Element, Lancaster City Council, NHS Lancashire Procurement Hub, and officers will present the South Ribble Community Wealth Building Plan at the ULG meeting on the 26th of November to engage the local anchor institutes and identify how they can support delivery of actions and any barriers to delivery.
Okay, can I just come back on that one? On recommendation 3, it says that the businesses, organisations such as the Federation of Small Businesses and the Institute of Directors and the Confederation of British Industry, will they be consulted in the near future?
So I've taken officer advice on this, and they've said that they're quite generalist institutes. I don't know if Jonathan would like to come in and just elaborate on that, because I spoke to Matthew, Jonathan and Jennifer yesterday, and they said that they're not the types of groups that they would consult as normally.
Yeah. Do you want me to chip in there, members?
Jonathan, I think I'm conscious of time here as well, and we've debated this quite at length, and we did it scrutiny as well. I think it'd be helpful, Jonathan, if you could pull a note together and email it out to all members. I think that would be there's a bit of detail here, and I think it'd be handy, better to see in a note if that's possible.
Yeah, of course, not a problem at all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the final question we have on this item is Councillor Michael Green.
Thank you. Can I thank Councillor Bolinski-Gelder for her presentation and for the presentation at the Scrutiny Committee as well. And I just wish to refer to those recommendations from the Scrutiny Committee. And Councillor Walton has just made reference to one, the organisations that we will consult with. From recollection, we also at Scrutiny resolved that consultation takes place with the local Chamber of Commerce, which would have a very local input. So that one needs to be added to that as well, please. Pleased to hear that you've now consulted with some businesses, although they, from what you've said, they tend to be the larger businesses, and there needs to be consultation, obviously, with all the small businesses right across South Ribble, because this will have an impact upon them moving forwards, and we want to boost the economy rather than risk taking it backwards. So that's important. And with regard to the consultation with business organisations, that needs to take place, in my view, as soon as possible, because they need to be in a position to be able to shape what we are doing as a council and give us advice on what the best way forward is regarding that. So I'm just seeking agreement on that from Councillor Boinski-Gelder. And finally, will this be going to full council for a decision, which was a resolution of the scrutiny committee? Thank you.
I'll answer the last question. Is that this, as it says in the report, this paper is coming back to the Cabinet in the new year, and Cabinet will then make a decision what happens from that point onwards. Aniela, do you want to come in on the other points?
Yeah, regarding the recommendations, I'm just going to repeat what I said in my presentation, that all the recommendations are being reviewed with a formal response as part of the next paper, which comes to Cabinet in the new year.
Thanks, Aniela. Can you please just reconfirm the recommendations? We'll put that to the vote and then move on, if we may.
Yes, so some of the recommendations are actually part of some of the scrutiny recommendations are actually now part of the report recommendations. So the Cabinet endorsed the Community Wealth Building Action Plan. The Cabinet asked the Deputy Chief Executive to prepare a delivery plan covering the period to March 2022, including resources to deliver the actions, the delivery plan to be considered by Cabinet in January 2021. That further engagement with the business sector is undertaken, which will be reported to Cabinet in January 2021 and will feed into the delivery plan to be considered at that meeting. And that the delivery plan above be considered as part of the emerging budget for 2021-22, and the last one, that the member learning hour on community wealth building be held prior to the Cabinet meeting in January 2021. Thank you.
Thanks, Aniela. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Titherington. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on, unfortunately, we have to exclude the press and public for the final agenda item, which does disappoint me because it's a really good news story, and I'm sure that we'll be able to report this in the coming days to the local community. And I think, as just a point for the officers, it would have been helpful if perhaps we could have written this report in a different manner that would have allowed for it to be debated in public. And again, we'll look at that moving forward. But can I have a proposer and a seconder, please, that the